Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bharti and welcome to another episode of TFR Insights. And today we have with us Yuval Ruz, co-founder and CEO of Digital Asset. Yuval, first of all, it's nice to have you on the show. Welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here.
Tell us a bit about the company itself. We are one of the co-founders. So what problem you guys saw in the space that you wanted to solve that you created the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So started the company in 2014 and I've been looking at the space of crypto, blockchain, distributed systems for a few years. And what we realize is that in order to create enterprise adoption, we need to bring more tools and solutions to the space. So entered the space really from the point of view of blockchain. And what we realized very quickly is that although blockchain is going to solve many problems, at the end of the day, it's going to be an underlying technology that's just going to work, where actually solving the problems at the application layer is going to be very hard, and we didn't see anything out there. So we pretty much from day one started working on a language, which is now open source, and we'll talk about that in more detail, but a language called DAML, DAML, that abstracts a lot of the complexity of building what we call multi-party or distributed applications.
Yeah, I want to talk just quickly a bit about blockchain. By now it's quite clear the role blockchain is playing in so many different industries. But from your perspective, what are the industries that are leveraging blockchain? Because, blockchain means whenever there's any transaction, whatever kind of it, and if you want to ensure that there's no tampering whatsoever, that's the best technology to use. But talk a bit about what kind of use cases you have seen specifically.
Yeah, so I think you touched on some points, but at the end of the day, if you want to think very simply, blockchain is a distributed database where you can prove who is the owner of any piece of data at any given point of time, and it's tamper-proof. And when you start thinking about that, many of the industries, especially financial services, but that's not the only industry, that have a lot of what I would call shared processes across different companies. So when we say across different companies, it's even within companies, we have this thing where we call trust boundaries, where actually the visibility into data across different entities is something that is not possible or not allowed to do. For example, if you and I run two different companies, my data is my data, your data is your data, but to some extent, there's some kind of intersection on certain maybe transactions or workflows that we share with one another. And in today's world, because there is this trust boundary, you maintain your record of the truth and I maintain my record of the truth. And at the end of the day, when we need to come to an agreement potentially in the future on what is that shared state between the two companies, a lot of times mistakes happen, and now you need to reconcile and go and find out historically why we don't agree on that shared truth. So what blockchain came to solve is this exact problem. How do you know across trust boundaries that two interested parties can agree on shared data in real time? So any type of use case that requires to reconcile between two entities or two parties that are not allowed to share all data across each other is a great use case. So we're working in many use cases in financial services, a lot in post-trade, where there is multiple parties that are interested in what is the state of a security when it's going to settle, how much is going to settle, who needs to benefit when it settles. A lot of these things require massive amounts of reconciliation today, and they can be completely removed using blockchain technology. But if you take that logic, you can apply it to the insurance space, supply chain, healthcare, any type of industry where you have many interested parties seeing the same source of truth in real time.
You mentioned DML and open sourcing it. I'll talk about that. But since we're talking use cases, I would like to continue the discussion. Outside of the blockchain space, if you can talk about the use cases of DML and the adoption of digital asset. At the same time, after understanding those use cases, then we can talk about why you open sourced it.
Absolutely. So what we realized very early on is that building multi-party applications is fairly complex. There's a lot of moving parts. You need to know at any given point of time which party is allowed to do what with the data, is allowed to see what piece of data. Certain times you want to have only partial visibility into the underlying data. And doing all of these things with what we would call general purpose programming language becomes very, very complicated. And as the use case or the problem that you're trying to build becomes more and more complex, I would say the code base using traditional software becomes exponentially complex. So what we've done is we created DAML to be able to solve multi-party applications very easy. The code base using DAML gets reduced by almost 90% from a general purpose language, because all you have to do is focus on the business logic and not necessarily how the underlying technology is going to achieve that from a technology perspective. So for us, anything that requires multi-party workflow can be written in DAML. And the uniqueness is that if we talk that blockchain solves workflows or where you want to share data across trust domains, DAML is not restricted to that. It works with blockchains, but it also works with traditional technologies like a centralized database. And why that is important to state is because in the world of COVID especially, a lot of businesses are trying to solve their internal workflows to make sure that all of their internal processes don't have reconciliation issues and disagreement about what is the source of truth, even within an organization. And because COVID put a light on a lot of these processes that today are being manually processed, actually DAML can become a really great tool to build and automate a lot of internal workflows within an organization, and you can run that on a traditional technology. But also when you want to now take and extend these workflows across your company, maybe into workflows that you share with your clients or with other vendors, you can now use DAML on a blockchain. The nice thing about it is that from a developer perspective, there is really no difference if the use case is internal or external. DAML looks the same, doesn't matter what is the underlying technology. So if I, again, to your question, what is a use case? Any type of multi-party application where the authorization, the permission, which party is allowed to see what data at what given point of time is an important feature of the application. DAML is a very good tool for that use case.
Now, let's talk about why you decided to open source it and talk about the governance of the project. Are you trying to keep it as a digital asset managed project? You want to contribute it to the open source foundation? I mean, blockchain itself is part of the Linux Foundation's umbrella organizations. And then third would be, what kind of community are you trying to build? Because when you look at blockchain or any other open source technology, you have creators like you, then you have vendors who are trying to resell that technology, and then you have users who are simply consuming it. So these are three-part question. Why you open source it? What does the governance look like? And what kind of community?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, just for the viewers, we at Digital Asset, we're one of the founding members of Linux Foundation, the Hyperledger Linux Foundation. Yeah, people don't know, but just a tidbit of trivia is that Hyperledger was a company that Digital Asset bought in 2015. And when the Linux Foundation was created, we needed a name. We already had our company name called Digital Asset, so we actually contributed the name Hyperledger to the Linux Foundation. So we're very big believers in open source. At the end of the day, I believe that the direction of where software is going is that you need to deliver to your customer differentiated product and differentiated service at a differentiated price. And if you can't meet those things, you're not going to be able to lock in your client just because you have proprietary software. So for us, a language, historically, just if you look in practice, there's not many languages that were successful from a business perspective by being proprietary, and you actually sold the language. So just as a matter of practice, to us, if you want to have an adoption around a language, a programming language, it has to be open source. You have to be able to show people how it works, and that if you have adoption, you haven't locked your client into a proprietary language. So that's just a practical part of a language. Second of all, we don't monetize the language itself. We actually monetize the integration. So in order for the language to run on different technologies, it's no different than traditional languages. If you want them to run on a specific database, you need to have drivers. So we have drivers that are open source, and then we have drivers that are commercial, and those are the ones that we sell, and that's how we monetize. But at the end of the day, again, we believe that you need to almost force yourself to be in a situation that unless your product is differentiating both from a performance, features, price, your clients should be able to go somewhere else. We actually even have instructions how you can create DAML integrations without us and effectively compete with digital asset. So back to your question, DAML is a language. To create adoption for a language, from my perspective, it must be open source. And for us, that was kind of a very easy decision. The governance is that we are contributing to the language, but at a given point of time when we believe that it's mature and is mature enough and is capable enough, we would definitely look to put it into some kind of a foundation, which be able to govern it better.
I want to talk a bit about Hyperledger project and blockchain in general, in the sense that there's massive adoption, but it also seems sometimes that if you look at blockchain, Hyperledger, we always look at fintech. That's where you did touch upon a lot of other industries, but just the way OpenStack has kind of become a telco technology, is blockchain also kind of become a fintech technology, or there'll be other industries? Because when I used to talk to Brian Bellendorf, it was more like healthcare and so many different areas it will be used. So talk a bit about where else do you see it's going, or fintech industry has kind of dominated it?
Yeah, I think that it's a wonderful question, but I honestly do believe that any industry that suffers from operational inefficiency with lack of knowing data across entities or across interested parties in real time is a cause of cost, that would be an applicable industry. I think that the reason why the financial industry became such a fast adopter of blockchain is because a lot of times the use cases that are really good use cases for blockchain is the knowledge of who owns an asset and who and kind of the life of an asset, right? So if you think about like when a stock gets traded, what people don't know, although it gets traded effectively between two individuals or two companies, the amount of interested parties that are associated with that one trade, if it's the actual people that traded, there's the custodians, there's a clearinghouse, there's a settlement house, there's a CSD, and the list becomes so big, so quick, and all of those parties are interested in what is the state of that trade of a security. So I think in financial services, especially because of post the financial crisis in 2008, there has been so much pressure on the industry to reduce the operational costs. It was just such a quick reaction to this technology that could bring a lot of efficiency to this industry. But at the end of the day, the insurance space, the healthcare space, you're going to see similar trends that people are going to look to differentiate their products by making them more affordable. How do you make things more affordable? You need to make the operational side of that product significantly more efficient. So I think that you're going to see, and you're already seeing in trade finance, you're going to see in supply chain, healthcare, insurance, you'll see in IoT, you will see in government services. All of those industries are industries that requires multiple parties to agree on the source of truth. And in any place where you use traditional technology, you will have that inefficiency of reconciliation and disagreement on the truth. So I think you will see that technology going into those industries. The only reason why the financial sector was faster is there was just an immediate need and immediate applicability into these use cases.
I mean, blockchain space is not that crowded like Kubernetes, but it's still, a kind of crowded space. There are a lot of players. And like any other industry, there are players who are partners, investors, and there are also competitors. I mean, no matter where you look, especially in the open source world, their developers team will collaborate on the project, but their sales teams will go and compete against each other. So when we look at digital asset, you were one of the early, as you said, members of the Hyperledger Foundation. Still, you have the investment from the early on. So if you look at today's 2020 world, how do you still maintain your uniqueness, how you differentiate yourself from the competitors while leveraging the same technologies that everybody else is leveraging?
Yeah. So first of all, I really hope that vendors in this space, would start realizing that the space is tremendous, right? And I actually think that if you think about the goal of blockchain was to create one shared source of truth, creating all these, you have to do it exactly my way or it doesn't work, just ends up bifurcating the solution. So what will end up happening is that customers will have different solutions and different technologies that are not compatible with one another. And this whole goal of blockchain will be defeated by itself, right? So what we realized in 2018 is, our goal with DAML was to make the ability of a developer to build these very complex distributed application much easier. And the way we've done that is by creating a language that abstracts all the complexity of distributed systems from the developer. So you only need to write the business logic. But what we also realize is that it's an opportunity for us to actually collaborate with the industry rather than having to compete with everybody. And what we've done is we actually proved that DAML can work on any ledger out there, a traditional database, a blockchain, or any type of other persistence layer. And by doing that, you actually create a uniform development environment to your clients, right? They don't have to, if you need to build today, for example, with Hyperledger Fabric, you use chain code. And guess what? If in a year from now you decided that was the wrong ledger to use, and now you want to use Corda, guess what? Your entire work that you've done in the last year is scrap. You have to start all over again. Where if you start with DAML, you can actually use it on Hyperledger Fabric. And a year from now, if you want to move to Corda, you could actually move to Corda without changing one line of code. And if you then wanted to move to VMware Blockchain, which is a great partner of ours, guess what? You can move your application to VMware Blockchain without changing a line of code. And to us, that was a very big aha moment, which was this industry is big enough and there are companies out there that are working on really innovative products. Is there an opportunity for us to collaborate with them rather than having to compete with them, even though our differentiator is DAML, right? So there are other companies out there that are building really good blockchains, really good ledgers. Is there an opportunity for us to collaborate with them? And by doing that, not only create an opportunity for us to work with more partners, but also to create an opportunity for our customers to be able to choose the right technology at the right time and not lock themselves into one ledger just because today that was the right decision and maybe in a year from now it wouldn't. The last thing that I think is extremely important by taking that choice is that customers know that there's not going to be one ledger to rule them all. There's going to be multiple technologies out there, no different than how today in databases, you don't have just one vendor. You have Oracle, you have DB2, you have Microsoft. There's just so many different databases that work. So what they want to do is, if you think about, again, what blockchain tried to do is to bring uniformity about shared truth, is they want to know that these ledgers will be able to interoperate with one another. And again, just because everybody wants to compete with one another, what we realize is that we can actually use DAML drivers to interoperate with different ledgers. So you will see in the next few months a new product out of digital asset that actually allows you to have atomic transactions across any type of ledger out there. And again, for us, that's a very great opportunity for people to start collaborating rather than having to compete on every aspect of the ecosystem.
You all, thank you so much for taking time out from your busy schedule and talk about not only digital asset, but also how the whole blockchain ecosystem is evolving, growing, its use cases growing. So once again, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me today. And again, I'm a very big believer that the future of enterprise software, but just generally speaking, application is what we call shared state applications, sharing data in real time with fine grain controls of privacy of data. And therefore, we believe that using tools like DAML allows you to achieve that vision without having and unlocking the potential of shared state application, but without being locked in to one specific technology.